In your journeys across the world of Azeroth, you will undoubtedly encounter many different lands, some well-traveled and others incredibly remote. Far off the coast of northern Kalimdor, the Azuremyst Isles were once tranquil blue lands on the Veiled Sea. With the accidental arrival of the Draenei on the Isles, however, the land has been scarred from the effects of the Exodar's cataclysmic crash. Now, the Draenei have joined with the Alliance as they explore a new destiny on a new world. But beyond the warped surface of the land, adventurers may uncover something more about this distant part of Azeroth. Today, I'm here to present a new episode of WoW Rocks, a series where I investigate the geologic history of Warcraft zones. I'll be taking a look at the general geography of the Isles, the geologic activity, and how these broken land masses could have looked long ago. As always, thank you for your fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. Over 10,000 years ago, the Azuremyst Isles were part of mainland Kalimdor, a supercontinent containing all the landmass we would one day visit in-game. Much of this old Kalimdor was dominated by the Kaldorei Empire, the largest Night Elven civilization to ever exist, but it all came crashing down when the Well of Eternity, an arcane font sacred to the elves, imploded, causing an apocalypse that ripped apart the supercontinent into the many smaller continents and islands we know today. After the devastation, a new, less ambitious civilization of Night Elves emerged, the Quel'Dorei, who chose to live primarily in the harmony of nature and swore off the use of arcane magic. At some point following this sundering, some Night Elves sailed into the western Veiled Sea and found a pair of islands, fragments of the old empire now separated from the mainland. The elves named this area Narvalas, the view of unending stars. The tranquil woodlands and the isolated flora and fauna were left largely untouched by the elves, who were focused on restoring the mainland and recovering after the destruction. As such, the Draenei who crash-landed on the Isles encountered only a handful of elves and much more untamed wilderness. The islands are primarily wooded with evergreens, though there are some meadows as well, and of course, plenty of idyllic shorelines. The western shores are mountainous, with great peaks that provide a view of the surrounding land and sea. In contrast, much of the eastern shores are gentle, save for the isolated Amun Vale, a block of land insulated from the coast, and the first home of many Draenei to land on Azeroth. Before radiation from the crashed Exodar corrupted Bloodmist Isle, it would be difficult to find anywhere but peaceful forests and beaches on these islands. However, today I want to peek under the surface to show off a less tranquil, potentially dangerous side to these islands that I'm not sure many players have noticed. Azurewatch, a main settlement of the Draenei on the southern Azuremyst Isle, overlooks a pristine lake on the doorstep of the crashed Exodar. But there is something else to see here as well. Near the small falls, geysers can be seen, a direct indicator of geothermal heating in this region. This means that something volcanic or tectonic is likely happening below the peaceful scenery of Azuremyst. It's also possible that the nearby lake is a hot spring of sorts, but it's hard to be certain. While you might think this could just be a one-off random design choice, looking north to Bloodmist Isle reveals identical geysers on the main reservoir of the Bloodmist River, meaning this too could be a hydrothermal feature. Returning to Azuremyst, one can explore the ransacked Still Pine Hold, now overrun with corrupted owlkin. The pools in the back seem to be heated as well, but quest text directly confirms that the Bloodmist crystal planted here is mostly responsible for the vaporization of the water. But who knows, it could be naturally heated as well. There are two other features that, while they're well within the realm of skepticism, I still want to discuss. First off, the Emberglade in northeastern Azuremyst is a small wood teeming with elementals, and is the main location for Draenei Shaman learning the teachings of fire. The elementals within an area usually indicate the elements present there, so it's possible this area exists because of the land's strong ties to fire in the form of underground heating. Turning our attention northward, one can find two landmarks of a different variety, coral reefs. These features are usually only seen at lower latitudes where they survive in warmer waters, and it's possible that near these islands, the geothermal heating could play into the ecology as well, allowing the coral to survive or even thrive from chemical sources rather than just sunlight. Now that we've covered some evidence in favor of geologic activity underneath the Azuremyst Isles, let's unpack exactly how some of these features could be happening. First, the sundering is going to provide some important information on how the islands actually became islands. The energy unleashed by the Well of Eternity radiated outward, essentially pushing old Kalimdor apart into many different pieces. While there aren't any real-world examples we can turn to for such a destructive event, if we look at plate tectonics in general, we can theorize that, essentially, the one large continental plate may have been split open to make several new ones. With all the stress put on these new plates as they're pushed away from the epicenter, fault lines, or smaller cracks in the crust, could have also easily formed, increasing the damage to the surface environments. This leads me to two different theories about the plate tectonics of the Isles, but they both essentially result in the same geologic outcome we see at the surface. The first is that the chunk of land containing the ground of the Isles broke off from mainland Kalimdor and is now its own small tectonic plate. With the plate being pushed westward during the sundering, it would bump up against the plate of the Veiled Sea, causing a subduction interaction that would be responsible for the uplift we see on the western slopes of the islands, and the geothermal heating below. The unknown comes in when we talk about the eastern coast. Heading across the sea, you eventually come to the continent of Kalimdor that we know in-game. But what resides underwater is the real question. Is there a plate boundary here separating the Isles from the mainland? Or, as my second theory suggests, is this now just a weird case of continental rifting, where the crust of a single Kalimdor plate is being slowly pulled apart underwater, allowing more of the ocean to enter? It's hard to say, but whether or not you are an Azure Plate fan, this essentially leads to the same results, especially with the western shore and the general geothermal activity. This brings me to my final idea related to tectonics: plateaus and volcanic calderas. Thinking about the Azuremyst Isles, there is one specific area that stands out as having a relatively unique geography: Amen Vale, the valley where new Draenei begin their journeys. Surrounded by high mountains, streams from the mountains cascade down into Silverline Lake. While there are no current clues that indicate this is actually some sort of undercover volcano about to explode, it's still fun to speculate. Perhaps, like the Valles caldera in New Mexico, continental rifting led to a higher elevation portion of the terrain dropping down after volcanic activity, creating the mountainous outline of the caldera rim. Or, like the Yellowstone caldera in Wyoming, perhaps the landscape that was once attached to the west of Kalimdor sat above a hotspot of molten material below the crust, meaning it was once an active volcanic area, but since then the crust has drifted westward, bringing the remains of an ancient caldera with it. So, are the Azuremyst Isles about to get caught up in an insane volcanic event? Probably not, but the action isn't always what these videos are about. These two islands are two of my favorite unique areas in all of WoW, and I really just wanted to highlight some of the neat little details that give a new dimension to these out-of-the-way places. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to give a shout out to Paleo Magician for contributing to the ideas in this video, and I hope you all might now consider the Azuremyst Isles in a whole new way. Until next time, may the Force be with you.